My stepdaughter said I should be grateful to sit in the audience at her wedding. I sat at the bank instead, canceled transfers, and let her father perform. Guests noticed immediately. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reddit Visuals. I used to believe that some people were just misguided, that deep down everyone had good intentions. But let me tell you something that'll make your blood boil. Some people will drain your bank account, steal your pride, and then have the audacity to tell you to be grateful for the crumbs they throw you. I'm Tom. I'm 54. I've been with my partner, Cynthia, for nearly 17 years. We're not married, we just never got around to it, but we've built a life together. Shared bills, shared memories, shared heartaches, and most importantly, I've helped raise her daughter, Lacey, since she was 10 years old. Now, when I say raise, I don't mean I was there sometimes. I mean I was the one who taught her to ride a bike when she scraped her knees so bad she was afraid to try again. I was the one who sat through every single parent-teacher conference when her grades started slipping. I drove her to soccer practice at 6 a.m. on Saturdays for 4 years straight. I held her hair back when she got food poisoning after prom. I co-signed her first car loan. I paid every penny of her college tuition, all 4 years, plus her summer abroad program in Italy that cost me an extra $8,000. I loved that girl like she was my blood, and even when she tested my patience, even when she brought home boyfriends that annoyed the heck out of me, I never let her feel the absence of a father figure. Her biological dad, Gary? This guy was like a ghost. He'd surface every few years with a birthday card, usually late, and maybe a phone call on Christmas if he remembered. Never paid a cent of child support, never showed up to a single school event. But somehow, in Lacey's mind, he was this romantic figure who just couldn't be there because life was complicated. Meanwhile, I was just the guy who fixed her car, paid her bills, and apparently didn't matter. Still, I never made it about me. I figured when push came to shove, when it really counted, she'd know who her real father was. God, was I wrong. Fast forward to last year. Lacey gets engaged to Noah, nice kid, banker, treats her well. When she told us, she was bouncing off the walls with excitement. I remember thinking, I can't believe my little girl is getting married. It felt surreal. The planning started immediately. Designer dress shopping, venue tours, cake tastings, the whole 9 yards. And every single time they needed money, they came to me. Not Gary. Me. Tom, can you cover the venue deposit? It's $15,000. Sure, sweetheart. Tom, the photographer wants $8,000 up front. No problem. Tom, we found the perfect florist, but they need payment in advance. Consider it done. I wasn't just writing checks. I was emotionally invested. I helped pick the venue. I tasted 17 different cake flavors until I was sick of buttercream. I even drove 2 hours to look at a farm where they might have the reception. This was my daughter getting married, and I wanted it to be perfect. Over 6 months, I had transferred nearly $58,000. Not counting the engagement party I threw at our house that cost another $6,000. But who's counting, right? This was what fathers do for their daughters. Then came the bomb. We were at the final venue walkthrough, about 6 weeks before the wedding. Lacey's going through her checklist with the wedding planner when she casually drops, "Oh, and make sure Gary's boutonniere matches mine. He's walking me down the aisle." I actually thought I misheard her. "I'm sorry, what?" She looked at me like I was slow. "Gary's walking me down the aisle. I thought I mentioned that." The wedding planner, bless her heart, looked as uncomfortable as I felt. She excused herself to check on the sound system. "Lacey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I assumed I would be walking you down the aisle." She laughed, actually laughed. "Tom, come on. Gary's my real father. It just makes more sense." There it was. Real father. After 17 years, I was still just the guy who paid the bills. "Besides," she continued, "you should be grateful you're even invited to sit in the audience. A lot of stepfathers don't get that." Sit in the audience. Like I was some distant relative who got a pity invitation. I nodded slowly, smiled, and said nothing. But inside, something fundamental shifted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every bedtime story, every scraped knee I'd kissed, every time I'd chosen her soccer game over golf with my friends. All of it apparently meant nothing. The next morning, I called Gary myself. Hey, Gary, it's Tom. Oh, hey. He sounded surprised. We'd spoken maybe 5 times in 17 years. So you're walking Lacey down the aisle? Yeah, she asked me. Pretty excited about it. Great. Just curious, are you planning to contribute anything financially? Silence. I mean, I continued, since you're the real father and all, I figured you'd want to help with the wedding costs. Uh, I'm kind of tight right now. Right. Well, just so you know, I've covered about 64,000 so far, so if you want to chip in for the father-daughter dance song or maybe the rehearsal dinner. More silence. Look, Tom, I appreciate everything you've done, but you're the real father. I got it. I hung up. 2 weeks later, at the final family dinner before the wedding, Lacey stood up to give a toast. She thanked Noah's parents for welcoming her. She thanked her mom for being her best friend. She thanked Gary for making the trip to walk her down the aisle. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, waiting for my name. Nothing, not even thanks to Tom for helping make this wedding possible. Radio silence. When I got home, I sat in my office and stared at my computer screen for about an hour. Then I opened my banking app and started making calls. Every vendor that hadn't been fully paid yet, canceled. Every future transfer I'd scheduled, terminated. The remaining $22,000 in payments due the week of the wedding, not happening. Now here's what Lacey didn't know about wedding vendors. They want their final payments 7 to 10 days before the event. And most of them have clauses that if you don't pay, they don't show. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. I just waited. 3 days before the wedding, my phone rang. Tom, there's a problem. It was Cynthia, and she sounded panicked. The caterer called. They said the final payment was declined. Huh, that's weird. Tom, did you cancel the payment? Yes, I did. What? Why? Because I was told to be grateful to sit in the audience, so I decided to be grateful from the bank instead. The explosion was immediate. Screaming, crying, accusations of sabotage. Lacey got on the phone, called me every name in the book, said I was ruining her wedding out of spite. I stayed calm. Lacey, your real father is walking you down the aisle. Maybe your real father can handle the real bills too. And I hung up. The next 2 days were chaos. Not for me, I was having a great time. My phone buzzed constantly with increasingly desperate calls and texts. Noah's parents apparently offered to help, but they'd already spent a fortune flying in their extended family from Oregon. Gary was mysteriously unreachable. Seems he'd turned his phone off. The morning of the wedding, I put on my best suit and drove to the venue. Not to attend. Oh no, I parked across the street and watched the show. At 2 p.m. when the ceremony was supposed to start, guests were still milling around outside. The florist had sent a skeleton crew with basically grocery store flowers. The DJ never showed. They were playing music from someone's iPhone through a small Bluetooth speaker. The photographer was there, but he kept checking his phone and looking stressed. At 2:30, Gary finally appeared, looking confused and overwhelmed. I watched him through my windshield as several people approached him with urgent conversations. I could only imagine what they were saying. Are you covering the bar service? The caterer needs payment before they'll serve dinner. Sir, the limo driver is asking about his fee. Gary looked like he wanted to disappear. At 3 p.m., they finally started the ceremony. I had to admit, watching Gary walk Lacey down that aisle was something. His smile looked more like a grimace, and I could see sweat stains on his shirt from where I sat. During the ceremony, I noticed guests looking around, whispering. The flowers were wilted. The music kept cutting out. The photographer was gone. Apparently he'd left after not getting paid. But the real drama started at the reception. The caterer had downgraded the menu to basically sandwich platters and grocery store sheet cake. The bar ran out of alcohol in the first hour because they'd only brought half the original order. The DJ situation meant no father-daughter dance music, no first dance, no party music at all. I watched people leaving early. By 7 p.m., half the guests were gone. Around 8 p.m., I saw Gary outside on the phone, pacing back and forth. He looked miserable. I drove home, poured myself a bourbon, and waited. The call came at 10 p.m. It was Noah. Tom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I knew you'd helped financially, but I didn't understand everything. Lacey told me you were just her stepfather, but after tonight, after talking to her relatives, I realized you were her dad, her real dad, and we screwed up. Bad. I appreciated the call, but I didn't respond. Over the next few days, the fallout was spectacular. Cynthia moved in with her sister. Lacey sent me a 10-page letter explaining how I'd humiliated her on the most important day of her life and shown my true colors. I burned it without reading past the first paragraph. But here's the thing that made it all worth it. 2 weeks after the wedding, I ran into Mrs. Henderson from down the street. She'd been at the wedding. "Tom," she said, pulling me aside, "everyone knew." "Knew what?" "What you'd done for that girl, and how she treated you. People were talking about it all night. Gary spent the whole reception looking like he wanted to crawl under a rock. By the end, he was telling people he hadn't realized how much you'd contributed, and that he felt terrible about the whole thing." She paused. "Honestly? People respected what you did. Standing up for yourself like that. Nobody blamed you." 3 weeks later, Gary called me. "Tom, I owe you an apology. I had no idea. Lacey made it sound like you were just some guy her mom was dating. I didn't know you'd raised her. I didn't know about the money, the years, everything you'd done. I feel like an ass." "You should," I said, and hung up. Last month, Noah reached out again. Apparently, he and Lacey had been fighting about the whole situation. He'd been asking questions about her childhood, about who had actually been there, and the more he learned, the more uncomfortable he got with how she'd treated me. "She keeps saying you overreacted," he told me. "But Tom, I've done the math. You spent more on our wedding than my parents spent on their house down payment. And she treated you like hired help. I don't blame you for what you did. Lacey hasn't spoken to me since the wedding. Cynthia and I are in counseling, trying to work through this mess. Some days are better than others. But you know what? I sleep great at night. For the first time in years, I'm not wondering if I'm enough, if I matter, if my sacrifices mean anything." I found out exactly where I stood, and I responded accordingly. The best part? I heard through the grapevine that Gary has completely ghosted again. Hasn't called Lacey once since the wedding. Apparently, when she reached out to thank him and talk about building a relationship, his response was, "I'm glad I could help with the wedding, but I'm not really looking for a father-daughter thing." Meanwhile, I'm the one who supposedly wasn't her real father. So here's my question for you. Was I the a-hole for pulling my financial support when I was told to be grateful to sit in the audience? What would you have done if you'd spent 17 years and $60,000 raising someone only to be treated like a wedding crasher at their big day? Drop a comment and let me know. I'm genuinely curious whether you think I went too far, or if you would have done the same thing. Thanks for watching.